back, explorers. I am your host, Dr. Tenninger Kalmberger, back again to bring the ancient world to you. Because, as you all know, this is not ancient aliens. This is, in fact, the real thing. And of course, these are the Dirt Diaries. And of course, a special shout out and hello to those lounging in the villa, taking notes in the library, and snooping in the restricted section. Wow, I cannot believe that we're already at the end of the first season of the Dirt Diaries podcast. And I cannot thank you all enough for being here. With Spotify Wrapped coming out, I was just so blown away with all of the support. And I was so speechless when I got like the full like report out and saw that you guys are streaming the Dirt Diaries podcast in over 50 countries. From me to you, thank you just for allowing me to do this and for listening to me geek out, nerd out, academic blackout in your car, your house, your earbuds, and more. Truly, I never thought that this was possible. I'm just a girl at the end of the day who just loves ancient history, archaeology, and I'm just so happy that you guys are here and part of the incredible Dirt Diaries community. And I am so excited already for next season. I'm actually going to be aiming to have also video here on Spotify as well as YouTube. So goodbye presentation formats. I'll still be having some photos, of course, but I'm actually going to really be trying to like get my stuff together, my shit done in time, and have a video component for both YouTube and Spotify. That's really my New Year's resolution. It's to get that done. And I'm also hoping to get some great interviews done on here as well. So stay tuned for that. So, as this is the last episode of the season, I wanted to break down some top archaeological discoveries to come out this year. And yes, that also includes archaeological reports as well. It's really funny to come full circle this entire podcast season because the first episode of the podcast was, Can You Dig It? So this one is, we're burying everything once again because our season's over, just like excavation seasons, it has to come to an end. And we started with some of my favorite finds over the last years, but now this episode is truly ending with the top discoveries, in my opinion, of 2024. So, because I always get asked, what was your favorite archaeological discovery to come out this year? We're digging deeper into them here. But before we get out the archaeological reports, take out the artifacts for magnification and a deeper look, we gotta talk all of the extras of the holiday season. While the Dirt Diaries was streamed worldwide, we too are heading international again next year in 2025. The Egypt trip is coming up this April. And you guys, this trip makes the perfect gift this time of the year because I don't know about you guys, but the older I get, and my birthday is actually coming up on the 15th, and I'm turning 31. And the older I get, the more that I've realized that I personally don't want material goods for gifts. I'd rather have experiences, whether they be travels or memories, with the ones that I love and friends, family, and loved ones. That's really what I've come to understand is it's not the material stuff anymore. It's the memories, the adventures. That's really what I personally want. And in fact, my husband and I actually started doing this when we started dating. We realized early on, like, hey, like material stuff's really like cool and great and everything, but we would much rather have all of these memories to last a lifetime. Things and stuff come and go, but yeah, everything else lasts forever. And all of the friendships and everything. I know I'm currently finishing up writing all my holiday cards to all of my September Egypt group travelers. So honestly, like the friendships that you make, it's truly just, I have no other words for it other than just, thank you guys for this community. And I had so much fun connecting with everyone in person back in September, and I'm looking forward to doing it again in 2025. So if you're looking for something from Santa this year, perhaps an early birthday gift, or even treating yourself because you absolutely deserve it, these trips are an incredible way to travel with an archaeologist and a professional on a bucket list adventure. Not only are we traveling to incredible places, but we're doing it with a group of people who love ancient history, mystery, and more. We travel as friends, which is why I personally love group travel because It's for anyone and everyone, for single travelers to those with travel buddies or looking to travel with family. There are also financing options available, and only a deposit is needed to hold your spot. And I really try and make this as accessible as possible because history really belongs to everybody. But of course, you might have questions, anything like that. Please, you guys, email me and let's chat. Or hell, let's set up a meeting to discuss all this kind of stuff. I've had so many meetings about, the upcoming travel stuff, and I want to make this as easy and seamless as possible. So whether you have questions on, what's a good airport, or how do I book a flight, or I've never traveled internationally before, email me and let's chat. I'm so happy to do so. And you guys know I can talk Egypt and ancient history all day long. So really, it is never a bother. Please, let's chat. And of course, if you're looking for more, don't forget to join Patreon, where, of course, there's extra content for all of you history lovers out there, for all of the tomb mates, really. And this month, you can catch extra archaeology news, bite-sized history videos, and dives into artifacts. And if you're already on Patreon, you know that I already listed some of my top finds. So you guys already got a sneak peek. And of course, for this month's mythology video, I'm not diving into a who, but a what, as we look at the Mayan underworld known as Xibalba. And I'm so excited to tackle this because mythology and the mythological characters and gods and goddesses are so fascinating on their own. But mythological realms are also so important into ancient civilizations, religion, and practices. So I really wanted to tackle the underworld of the Mayan people, which I'm so excited to do so because it's so cool. But you guys know that I think everything is cool, but like, I really mean that this is cool. And for the restricted section, we're solving the murder from Death on the Nile by famed author Agatha Christie. Somebody already got killed last month, and now we're going to solve it. And yes, this does seem a little bit different from what we've read before. And hell, I was inspired to read it because never read anything by her, and because I stayed in the same hotel as her in Egypt. The restricted section, you guys are also getting an early sneak peek at my conference poster that I'm presenting at in January. And next year, once I get the okay, I will be posting my article in the early months of next year that is out now for publication. Got it done. Your girl's getting published. I'm so excited for that. It was a lot of work, but I'm really, really excited. And I already have a lot of projects lined up for what I'm going to be talking about next in my own research, just because like everything just lines up perfectly like that. I don't know. I can't explain it. It's just how my brain works, little hamster on the wheel. But now that we're all set here, grab your scoring cards because we're diving into some of the top archaeological discoveries of 2024. So while we're going through the year, if you are on Patreon, I've been struggling to try and cull the herd to see who's going to make varsity of my top finds. And because I'm not any closer to my answer, I think I'm going to just kind of list some, and then from there, maybe do my top three if I can pick my top three. And I know it's also the beginning of December that this episode is coming out in. And I know as soon as I post this, I know that there is going to be something that comes out in the archaeology world that I will be kicking myself over because it comes out probably the day that this posts or the day after. Because literally, you guys, this is how archaeology works. And archaeologists, we even have a running joke on excavations that you will find the best thing of the season on the last day of excavations. And every time I've been on an excavation, that's exactly what happened. So I'm sure that this fun little archaeology curse will carry over to the podcast because such is life. So before anything news and groundbreaking comes out, let's dig a little deeper and explore everything that 2024 gave us. And yes, I'm bringing us all the way back to the beginning of the year with the finds and working my way back to present day in December. And remember, I'm not picking any favorites yet. I'm just listing them. And I'd love to hear what you guys are ranking each and every one of these finds. Is it a 9? Is it an 8.5? Is it a 6.2? What are you guys ranking these finds? So first up, we have a discovery that came out earlier this year, back in January, from the site of Saqqara in Egypt. And First off, this site might ring a bell as this is actually where the step pyramid to Djoser is. And yes, we will be here. And yes, you will actually be seeing ongoing current excavations at the site of Saqqara in April. Okay, so these figurines, they were found in a tomb dating to the Greco-Roman period, which I know covers a lot of time. But this is a very interesting find because other tombs in this burial complex from Saqqara that were found during excavations were found to date also to the second dynasty, which chronologically is older than that of Djoser. For those wondering, Djoser dates in the king list to the third dynasty, marking it as the Old Kingdom. But Dynasty 2 is actually not considered to be part of the Old Kingdom. It's actually considered part of the early dynastic period. So early dynastic, just Spark Note edition, is dynasties 1 and 2. But to see the site still being used during the New Kingdom through the Greco-Roman period tells us that this site specifically was of significance to the ancient peoples. Now, these figurines were found in a tomb, and they show the goddess Isis Aphrodite. And yes, this is actually one goddess. So it's not two goddesses standing next to each other. This is a representation of Isis Aphrodite. So let me explain, because you might be thinking, well, you just listed two goddesses. How is this one representation? Well, okay, let me explain. So with the cult of Isis during this period, she is also referred to as the goddess of 10,000 names and will often combine herself with other goddesses to take on their aspects. We see this a lot in art. So here, while it is in fact Isis, she is also combined with the fertility aspects of the Greek goddess Aphrodite. And you may be thinking, well, isn't Isis also a fertility goddess? And right, you are. But this aspect, the fertility aspect, is highlighted further and really more pronounced, I would say, with the coupling of Aphrodite in this sense. We also, with the cult of Isis, see representations of Isis Fortuna. We also see Isis Venus, Isis Aphrodite. We see so many different takes on who she is, which is so fascinating. But kind of the shorthand version with the cult of Isis is, if you are looking at like kind of like dual aspects of like Isis Aphrodite, the first name is going to tell you the goddess who is represented. And then the second name, so in this case, Aphrodite, is going to point you in the direction of what is being highlighted specifically by Isis. So fertility in this sense. Does that make sense? If you are interested in more on the cult of Isis, you can, of course, check out my other podcast, Sticks and Bones. We did a whole deep dive into the cult, the mystery cult of Isis. One of my favorites. I love telling my students about it every semester. All right, on to the next one. Next up, archaeologists got to taste ancient wine in 2024 because let's be honest, if you can't try the ancient food, why even become an archaeologist? Truly, I wrestle with that each and every day. Well, back in March, a report came out concerning a new study that shed light on the ancient wine's flavor profile. What kind was it? And archaeologists and scholars actually found that it tasted somewhat spicy, smelling of toasted bread, apples, roasted walnuts, and curry. Like it really just smells so warm. Like that just sounds incredible, especially like in the winter months right now. And the Romans were actually able to make much better, more tasty, and much more stable wines than is commonly assumed. That's right. The ancient people knew what they were doing when they started producing wine. And because the wine was fermented in large earthenware dolia, this actually resulted in sometimes an orange color of the wine. And this has to do with how the grapes would fall in the earthenware. But comparing this color to modern day wines is kind of tricky because in Rome, their wines weren't necessarily separated into the reds, the whites, and even the rosés, right? We didn't have that kind of aisle separation in the ancient world. Really, they belong to a wide spectrum of colors ranging from white to yellow to goldish to amber to brown. And then we even see wine that's, of course, red, normal, but even black. And ancient wines were usually made from white grapes and made according to techniques that are bound to have tasted oxidative with complex aromas of course, the toasted crackling bread, dried fruits such as apricots, roasted nuts like walnuts or almonds, even flavor or scent profiles that are very similar to green tea. So now we actually know what ancient wine tasted like. And remember, guys, with ancient wine, it would have to be diluted because how it came out was going to be very, very thick. And then, of course, with the big kailikis and all of the cups and everything, you would then add water into it. How cool is that? I really hope somebody actually starts to make like ancient wine flavor profiles because how cool would that be? I don't know. I would drink the hell out of that. Of course, drink responsibly. And next up, we have Herculaneum scrolls being deciphered because if you recall, back in 2023, the first word was deciphered from a scroll that was carbonized during the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE. And this was found through the help of scans and, of course, with AI. But now scholars are able to digitally unroll these scrolls and have found passages of text that we are now able to read for the first time in almost 2,000 years. These charred documents, now referred to, of course, as the Herculaneum scrolls, were recovered from a building believed to be belonging to Julius Caesar's father in law, you guys, which is so cool. Everything comes back to Caesar. But these recently decoded passages were actually pulled from the end of a scroll, and they reveal words written by the philosopher Philodemus, who was believed to be the philosopher in residence who was working at the library in which the scrolls were found. In the deciphered text, Philodemus writes on pleasure and whether the abundance of goods available can affect the amount of pleasure that they give. So, really was looking at ancient supply and demand and was, asking the question, if something is not always available, are we going to find more pleasure when we get it as compared to something that's always readily available, which is, really something to think about, especially, as we are ending the year. It's kind of still current today. He writes, as too in the case of food, we do not right away believe things that are scarce to be absolutely more pleasant than those which are abundant. And this really matches Philodemus's Epicurean school of philosophy, which prioritizes pleasure as the main goal in life. And this almost 2,000-year-old writing even appears to possibly take a dig at the Stoic school of philosophy that he writes has nothing to say about pleasure. Really, this one's pretty cool because, yes, of course, like not only are we getting, inscriptions and writings from carbonized scrolls from Herculaneum, which is just mind blowing on its own, but we are getting ancient shade. I love it. Like, this is why I love being an archaeologist. I mean, you guys have seen it with the world's oldest complaint this season. What we find is truly just people always being people complaining, people throwing shade at one another, and it's still preserved thousands of years later. Absolutely incredible. Next up on the list is a 3,600-year-old tube of lipstick. And this was actually found in an unassuming vial that was carved out of a greenish chlorite stone. And this vial was recovered along with other looted artifacts in southeast Iran after a large-scale flood uncovered an ancient burial ground. And this vial actually had a powdery substance that was left behind. So the substance, of course, was gathered and then sent to a lab to be tested. And the test revealed a crazy surprising result that the majority of the powder was made up of hematite, which produces a deep red color. I'm going to talk about the lipstick in a bit, but not only are we finding out that this was a tube of lipstick, but it came in a dark, deep red color. And of course, you guys have been paying attention because we talked about ancient makeup. This stuff is just so cool. But with this powder, archaeologists are kind of uncertain because they can't really tell if it would have been in a liquid form or a paste, although there is a little bit more of a tendency to lean towards the paste kind of texture, where it would have been very, very similar to how lipsticks are, feel texture-wise today. And also, archaeologists are thinking, it could have been used for cosmetic purposes and are confident that this was an early form of lipstick. But compared to other ancient cosmetics, the dark red here, this color is really unique. But perhaps the most surprising thing to come out of the testing was not the lipstick's color, but the chemical composition, which shows that it is remarkably similar to how modern lipsticks are made today. Other elements in the lipstick include plant fibers and particles of quartz crystal, which may have been intended to provide extra shimmer and glitter when you put it on. And fortunately for us, the powdery substance included enough carbon based materials such as plant fibers that they were able to carry out radiocarbon testing. An analysis reveals that the lipstick dates between 1936 and 1687 BCE. And according to the archaeologists and scholars, the lipstick was likely part of a funerary deposit, as cosmetics were frequently buried with their deceased individuals and owners. And this lipstick vial and the other associated artifacts, which are now housed in the Giraffe Archaeological Museum, are actually thought to come from the kingdom that ruled over the region at that time. But I'm really excited to see what further studies can come from this and just more about ancient makeup. And since we, got to taste ancient wine this year, we also, found something that will pair pretty well with that, which is the oldest bread. That's right. Archaeologists discovered an 8,600-year-old bread loaf at Çatalhöyük, which is a Neolithic settlement in modern-day Turkey. Now, Çatalhöyük is noteworthy on its own because it is one of the first human proto-cities to have been built in the world. It was densely packed with mud brick houses that were covered in plaster, paintings, and other symbolic decorations. And its population was believed to have hovered around 8,000 people. Çatalhöyük is such a cool site to look into, and I highly recommend it. And analysis conducted determined that the spongy residue of the bread that was found was in fact fermented bread from, get this, 6600 BCE. Now, this bread was discovered back in excavations from 2021, but we are now getting the results. And the bread was small and round and spongy, and it was found in the corner of an oven. And it was only found to be bread after careful documentation. Archaeologists thought it was just carbonized remains at first. And the oven structure that was discovered was actually covered with a thin clay that allowed all of these organic remains, both wooden and bread, to be preserved until today from the site. Now, the earliest known evidence of leavened bread comes from Egypt. Then this was, the previous record holder. But the find at Çatalhöyük predates all others, making it the world's oldest bread. And archaeologists can say that this find from Çatalhöyük is the oldest bread in the world now. It is a reduced version of a loaf bread, and it even has a fingerprint pressed in the center. But it was not baked, but rather it was fermented and came to the present day with starches inside, which is so cool to just think about. I mean, ancient food on its own is so cool, and I want to do a whole episode on ancient food. But I don't know, to me, this one really stands out because this entire year, I've actually homemade all of the bread in my house just by doing like a simple artisan loaf. And I don't know, it's just something like this that I'm still doing today, and maybe pressing my hands and fingers the same way somebody else did 8,000 years ago is just so cool. And just to think that, perhaps we were even making the same designs or kneading it the same, but, maybe our techniques were a little bit different or varied, but at the same time, both loaves from then and now were still likely made with love. And moving on from the ancient bread, we're headed back to Italy with this one because we're going to Pompeii. We're actually heading to Herculaneum's neighbor Pompeii for this find that came out in April. This is when archaeologists in Pompeii discovered an ancient dining room that was adorned with a series of stunning frescoes, each depicting a pair of mythological characters that are associated with the Trojan War. Truly the favorite epic of the time. Now, this room measures about 50 feet long and 20 feet wide. And this space features a mosaic floor made with over 1 million tiny white tesserae tiles. Can you imagine the time and effort and energy and care it went into this room? Unbelievable. One of these frescoes actually depicts the legendary Helen of Troy and Paris, whose, of course, elopement and abduction set off the series of events that would bring us to the Trojan War, really the catalyst, if you will, because Helen had been married to Menelaus, the king of Sparta, before she was abducted or fled to Troy with Paris. And I say abducted or fled because various versions of the myth differ regarding whether she was abducted by Paris or whether she went willingly, which on its own is just fascinating to think about. And on the other side, we see that the ancient artist reimagined the Greek god Apollo trying to seduce Cassandra. And as mythology goes, to win Cassandra's favor, Apollo gave her the power of prophecy. But when she, broke her promise to, have a relationship with the god, he ended up cursing her so that no one would believe her visions. And of course, she features predominantly in, of course, the Trojan War and the tales. She's the one who actually tries to tell the Trojans about the Greeks and the horse. Nobody believes her. Truly, a fate worse than death is to have nobody believe you when you know what's going to happen. And the walls behind the frescoes are covered in a backdrop of black paint, likely to prevent smoke and soot stains from showing, which makes a lot of sense. You ever have a candle too close to your wall in your room or something? You might get some residue, some black residue left over. So it's believed and proposed by archaeologists that this is why the room was painted black. It's so that people didn't see this. And to just think about what conversations these images would have inspired, what dinner parties they were a part of, and really, why would the owners of this room and this house, why did they choose these scenes? It's so interesting. But following this find, we're headed to the Great Pyramid in Egypt, because without breaking any ground, archaeologists in Egypt discovered an anomaly beneath a royal graveyard near Giza's 4,500-year-old Great Pyramid to Khufu. And this pyramid, which is, of course, Egypt's largest, was built to honor the pharaoh of the 5th dynasty. And yes, this is the one that we will be inside in April. Its neighboring ancient necropolis contains many above-ground monuments, like mastabas, that are dedicated to the pharaoh's family members or other high-ranking officials of the time. We also, right behind his pyramid, is the queen's pyramids behind him. And of course, the mastaba is a type of tomb that predates the pyramids. And the mastaba has a flat roof and is a rectangular structure on the ground. It's pretty low. And it can be constructed out of limestone or mud bricks. Mud bricks is usually the most common. And these surface level tombs, more often than not, have vertical shafts connected to underground chambers where the body would be placed. Many of the site's mastabas have been excavated, but one vacant area without any noteworthy above ground features has been left unexamined. And this, my dear friends, is where the anomaly occurred. So between 2021 and 2023, researchers were analyzing this area. But instead of, digging with a pickaxe and getting dirty in the sand, they decided to use several non-invasive imaging technologies, which includes ground penetrating radar and electrical resistivity tomography, to study the site. And the resulting scans revealed that something was going on, and a little bit strange if you ask me. So what they found was an L-shaped structure connected to something much deeper. The shallow structure, which is the L-shaped one, and the scans indicate that it was filled in with sand after construction. At one point, it may have been an entrance to the deeper structure. So the L-shaped structure is about 33 feet long, and it's buried 6.5 feet deep. Below it, the scans show another structure. And currently, the researchers aren't sure of the deeper structure's contents. Archaeologists say that it could be empty or filled with materials such as sand and gravel. While many questions remain, the scans point to the possibility of the presence of archaeological remains. And many of the workers actually are saying that it's so important that they should be promptly excavated to establish their purpose. And yes, excavations are currently underway. And yes, we actually saw plenty of excavations actually happening at the site nearby the pyramid and in this area back in September. So I'm super excited to see what comes out next year. And yeah, I'm really excited to keep my eyes open for this anomaly because that's just crazy to me. And following this find, we're headed back to Pompeii. We're just literally hopping back and forth because we got to talk about the discovery found in June. And here, an ancient Roman shrine room was discovered during the excavations by archaeologists at the Pompeii Archaeological Park, specifically in Regio 9. And this 86 square foot sacarium features blue painted walls decorated with female figures depicting the four seasons of the year, along with allegorical characters of agriculture and shepherding. And the room's color being blue is notably rare and would have demarcated it as a place of importance, likely for ritual or cultic activities and for storing sacred objects. Now, in the room were 15 transportable amphora and a bronze set of two jugs and two oil lamps. Also found at the site were construction materials that were ready for renovations, including the remains of oyster shells, which would have been crushed and added to plaster and mortar mixes. Unfortunately, they didn't get to do their construction or refurbishment of the room because, unfortunately, Mount Vesuvius would erupt. And I will say that this blue sacarium was actually found in the same area as the dining room that we just talked about with the mythical frescoes. And in this room, on every wall, there is a small niche. So perhaps offerings were also left in the niches as well. Now, moving out of Italy, we are going to the seafloor in the Eastern Mediterranean for this next find because a natural gas surveying vessel operating about 90 kilometers, which is 56 miles, off the coast of the Eastern Mediterranean, discovered a ship filled with hundreds of intact containers dating from about 3,300 to 3,400 years ago, placing it between the 14th and 13th centuries BCE, which means it's in the late Bronze Age, and it was found at an astonishing depth of 1.8 kilometers. Now, that is deep. Now, this 3,300-year-old vessel and its cargo of hundreds of intact amphora, which are the big storage vessels, they were found perfectly preserved on the seafloor. And these amphora, two of which were already brought up to the surface, they are of a late Bronze Age type, which dates it very nicely to the 14th century BCE. And these types are best associated with port cities along the coast of the Levant during a time when international maritime trade commerce, particularly with this region and even as far away with Britain, flourished. And scholars believe that this ship apparently sank likely amid a crisis. It could have been a storm or even a pirate attack. Both were common events during the late Bronze Age. But what makes this wreck especially exciting is the location, because it is the oldest ship now found in the Eastern Mediterranean deep sea, and it was found 90 kilometers from the nearest shore. And this is crazy because only two other shipwrecks with cargo are known to date from the late Bronze Age in the Mediterranean. They both come from the Turkish coast. We have the Cape Galedonia and the Ula Barun. We already talked about the Ula Barun here, but we only have these two shipwrecks from the late Bronze Age. But both of these shipwrecks were found relatively near the shore and were accessible using normal diving equipment like scuba gear. Based on these two finds, the academic assumption until now was that trade in that time was executed by safely flitting from port to port, hugging the coastline within eye contact. But this discovery now changes the entire understanding of ancient mariner abilities. It is the very first to be found at such a great distance where there was no sign or sight of any landmass. And there's so much potential, you guys, here for research because this ship is so well preserved at the depth that it is. The context of everything has not been disturbed by human hand, like divers or fishermen, nor has it been affected by waves or currents, which do impact shipwrecks in shallower waters, which, as a trade girl myself, from all of my research and dissertation work, this is really going to expand our knowledge of how interregional maritime trade functioned during this time. As you guys know from the Ula Barun shipwreck episode, we were already seeing how interconnected Egypt, the Levant, Mesopotamia, Ugarit, ancient Anatolia, and the Aegean world were via sailing. But how much more is this going to tell us? It's going to be incredible to see what else comes out of this. I'm super excited to continue to keep my eyes on this. Alrighty, back on the ancient food and drink train. Archaeologists discovered an urn with a reddish liquid in a family mausoleum dating back to the first century CE in Seville. An archaeochemical study identified this liquid as what was that? White wine, making it the oldest wine preserved in liquid form. Now, this wine was originally discovered back in 2019 after a family was having some work done on their house and they stumbled across a sunken tomb on their property, which that's kind of cool, but also kind of terrifying of like what else is underneath these people's property. And this tomb has been dated to the early first century CE. It contained 8 niches, 6 of which housed urns with cremated remains and various objects that were very typical of Roman funeral rituals. But the urn that was found in niche 8 really put this right on our map here, because inside an oval lead box with a flat domed lid was this urn, and it had 5 liters of a reddish liquid that were discovered inside it. And it was presumed to be part of the original content along with the cremated bone remains. Analysis by experts at the University of Cordoba has established that the ancient tawny liquid inside the urn is a local sherry-like wine. And the liquid inside the urn was reddish brown because of the chemical reactions that had taken place in the 2,000 years since the white wine was poured in there. So yeah, it originally started out white, you guys. And the remarkable longevity of this wine in its liquid state bears witness to the sophisticated Roman methods of preservation and storage, as well as the distinct climatic circumstances that permitted its preservation for nearly 2 millennia. Now, before this discovery, which is reported, of course, in the Journal of Archaeological Science reports, the oldest wine preserved in a liquid state was the Speyer wine bottle, which was excavated from a Roman tomb near the German city of Speyer in 1867. And that wine was dated to about 325 CE. According to researchers, the use of wine in Roman funeral rituals is well known and well documented. Therefore, once the cremated remains were deposited in it, the urn must have been filled with wine in a kind of libation ritual, meaning the pouring of liquid, during the burial ceremony or as part of the funeral rite to help the deceased in their transition to a better world. And this is really cool because so many times we see in, the Roman period of people doing libations, people pouring out wine. There's even a few sacred holidays back in the Roman times where you had to go and leave offerings of food and drink to your ancestors so that their ghosts wouldn't come back and haunt the town and destroy everything. And, keeping on the Roman funeral trend is the Tomb of Cerberus update. That's right. Archaeologists opened up a sarcophagus in the ancient tomb from Italy that was dubbed the Tomb of Cerberus because of its murals depicting the 3-headed dog, not because it had the remains of Cerberus in there. And here they actually opened up the sarcophagus that was inside. And archaeologists believe that the 2,000-year-old remains belong to an influential Roman patriarch who lived in the ancient city of Liternum. Researchers discovered the sealed tomb, of course, in 2023. And when it was discovered, it was found in a perfect state of conservation. The tomb also contained 3 painted altars, complete with vases that once held libations, alongside multiple well-furnished funeral beds. During their excavation of the tomb, archaeologists used a miniature camera to probe and peek inside one of its coffins before excavating it. The skeleton lay inside in a supine position, which is flat on its back, in an excellent state of preservation. The deceased here was covered with a damaged shroud, which probably mineralized thanks to thousands of years in the funerary chamber's climate conditions in there. Alongside the bones, researchers found glass ointment or perfume bottles. So right now, a textile archaeologist is studying the shroud's fabric to determine the origin of its yarn, and a plant biologist is currently studying the contents of the glass containers. So far, Researchers have determined via pollen samples that the tomb's occupants were rubbed with creams containing wormwood and goosefoot. And these ointments may have been intended to conserve or preserve the bodies. The researchers currently await the results of genetic testing, which could help reveal more about the deceased family origins and their identities, and will, of course, absolutely help illuminate funerary rites of the Romans in the area during this period. And second to last, we have 8,200-year-old makeup. And yes, this was discovered during archaeological excavations in Yeshalova Huyuk, where an 82-year-old coal made of stone material was discovered. And the excavation of the Yeshalova mound has been in progress since 2005. And I will say that this is a site in modern day Turkey. And this 8,200-year-old stone made coal pen was actually found during the ongoing archaeological works. Now, this coal pen measures 9.5 centimeters long and it's made of stone. And it's now considered to be the oldest coal pen that actually has residue of coal ever found. Now, there is in fact black paint residue at the tip of this find, and it's believed that this is coal. But this coal pen is an ornamental tool. And this shows us that these ancient women, 8,200 years ago, also cared about their makeup ornaments. And perhaps they were also fond of their beauty and wanted to anoint their faces with black coal. Perhaps they wanted to line their eyes like so many of us do today. And how this was done was they would have actually dipped the sharpened side of the stone tool into a container filled with paint. Today, this usage is still present, of course, throughout the world and in various parts of modern day Turkey. And this is actually not the first artifact that shows that women in the region had makeup tools. There are similar artifacts as far back as 4,000 years ago. But from this find, we are now seeing that coal and even coal pens were in use 8,200 years ago. And the black paint substance at the tip of the coal pen was actually sent out for analysis to a lab. And scholars and researchers currently are believing that it is manganese oxide, which the powdered mineral was the main component of coal, which we covered, of course, in the ancient makeup episode. Such a cool find. And to just see like ancient makeup tools like this, I line my eyes with winged eyeliner. And it's just so cool to see something over 8,000 years ago that was still being used. Like women were still lining their eyes even back then. It's just so cool. All right, last up on the list, you guys, is the new DNA analysis coming out of Pompeii. And this last one really speaks to me on what it means to be human and what being human is all about, because caring for others really stands out in this article. And this is exactly what we're seeing with the new DNA analysis coming out of the site. Because this new study has shattered historians' long held assumptions about some of the individuals who died during the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE. And of course, we know many of the forms of the victims were preserved as cavities in the ash after their bodies had decayed, which later archaeologists used to create the plaster casts that we see today. 86 of the casts are undergoing restoration currently, and this provided researchers with the opportunity to examine 14 of them. And from the 14, they took DNA from them. And the extraction process allowed them to accurately establish genetic relationships, determine sex, and even trace ancestry. And of course, their findings largely contradicted previous assumptions based solely on the physical appearance and the position of the cast, which the position of the cast, we have to remind ourselves, is not a realistic interpretation in terms of like how the body is like curving or bending in on itself or anything like that, because how the body reacts to the massively hot temperatures that were being produced during the eruption is actually going to cause the body to contort and the muscles to tense in such a way that we do get, some of the positions that we see in the plaster molds. And this study really illustrates how unreliable narratives based on limited evidence can be, often reflecting the worldview of the researchers at the time. For example, Using DNA extracted from broken bone fragments, the researchers concluded that the adult from the house of the golden bracelet was long assumed to be the mother that was holding her own baby. And it's named the house of the golden bracelet because this individual was, in fact, found wearing a gold bracelet. But DNA analysis has now found that the individual, the adult, was a man who had no genetic relation to the child. And more adult remains located nearby were long believed to be family members. All four, however, were male and unrelated. Likewise, the researchers were also able to show that the stories observers saw in the plaster cast, like two women embracing as they died, were just not true. Three possible relationships were identified by archaeologists at the time: a mother and daughter, two sisters, or lovers. Researchers have now identified the victims as male and female, with one being between the ages of 14 and 19, and the other being 22, after analyzing the skeletal remains. And because the inhabitants from Pompeii came from diverse genomic backgrounds, the genetic data also provided information about their ancestry. Finding that they were mainly descended from recent immigrants from the Eastern Mediterranean highlights the cosmopolitan nature of the Roman Empire. And of course, while the story of the mother trying to protect her child in their final moments together stirs emotion in all of us, but I personally find that this new study is really eye opening because we are seeing how individuals responded to ancient emergencies, how some chose to remain with one another. They chose to remain with strangers and sought refuge together. They sought to seek shelter together rather than continue to try and flee. Yes, the mother and child story was good, but in my opinion, this one's better. We see a man who is not related to a child choosing to help them and be with them in their final moments. We are seeing individuals who are not genetically related to one another choosing to be together in their final moments. And it's these stories that can come truly as a complete surprise, but can tell us so much about society. And it's about time that we tell their stories. So, with those being some of my top ones, I know I kind of went on for quite a bit with that. Other real notable ones are the new Mayan king name that was found at the site of Koba, DNA analysis of sacrificial victims from the site of Chichen Itza, Pompeii survivor names being found, Mycenaean armor being battle tested to see if it could have sustained damage in the Trojan War. Also, we have a new kingdom sword bearing the name of Ramses II. Very cool, as I am a sword girl. And two more Pompeii victims were also found this year. These two individuals were found to be trapped in a room during the eruption. One of them was a female between the ages of 35 and 45 years old, and she was clutching that purse full of coins. And the other individual was a man who was no more than 20 years old. All right, so final picks. God, oh, not everybody can make varsity. Oh my God. Okay. In no particular order. Like, I'm not saying the first one I say gets gold, silver, then bronze, but my top, oh my God, my top three. Okay, my top three. Gonna be the Pompeii DNA analysis. I think that's so freaking cool. I want to study more about, human relationships like that. It's so fascinating. Okay, so Pompeii DNA analysis is going to be top three. Personally, for my own research, I'm going to say the 3,300-year-old shipwreck that was discovered. And, oh, oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. I'm between three. Jeez. Oh my God, I got a game time decision. The anomaly near the pyramids. Ooh, the other, the other contenders, you guys, I was between the mythical scenes that were found in the dining room at Pompeii, as well as the world's oldest bread. But game time decision, I'm going the pyramid anomaly because seeing that area and seeing the excavations taking place near the Great Pyramid in September, I think that's what sold it for me, because being able to see it and see the area, Yeah, I'm wholly invested into what this anomaly actually is. Oh my God, don't hate me for my top three, but what are your top three if you had to pick out of these? What other ones listed did you guys really enjoy? Oh my God, what an episode. I know this one is probably longer than usual, but it is the final one of the season. So go back, take your time listening to it, listen to all the other episodes, impress all of your friends with all of your fun, cool knowledge, because this is the last episode of the season, you guys. I am going to be back in the new year, February 5th. The Dirt Diaries are coming back and better than ever. I'm so excited to show you guys my upcoming research. Once my article is published, I will share it with you all. And don't forget, Egypt is coming up. Set your Christmas list for Santa. I cannot wait to travel with you all again and connect with everybody in the Dirt Diaries community. And hey, if you don't want to cook in Egypt, I get it. It's hot. It's hot. I sweat like no other. I get it. Well, you can also come to China with us. I'm super excited about that. And from me to you, once again, thank you so much for an incredible season. Have a very safe, healthy, and happy holiday season, a very bright new year for all of you guys. And I will see you guys in February of 2025. As always, keep your books open, stay curious, and I'll see you guys next time on the Dirt Diaries.